अस्सलाम वालेकुम मैं हमने एजुकेशन वाली रेहान कॉलेज में नंबर कैंपस से स्टूडेंट हूँ। आज का हमारा टॉपिक फॉर्मा है द फ्यूचर ऑफ एजुकेशन, हाउ टेक्नोलॉजी इज ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग लर्निंग।
Salam assalam. It's a huge topic, but I love where your head is at. To me, it feels like we're moving away from just memorizing facts and toward actually knowing how to use them. I'm curious, in your role as education watchman, what's the biggest shift you've noticed on your campus?
What does the future of education mean to you?
For me, it's all about personalization. I imagine a world where the average student doesn't exist because the curriculum adapts to how each person actually learns. Instead of everyone moving at the same pace, technology lets people dive deeper into what sparks their curiosity and get extra help exactly where they're struggling. It feels like education is becoming less of a conveyor belt and more of a guided exploration. Does that sound like a future you'd want to see on your campus?
How is technology changing the way students learn today?
It's making everything way more accessible. Students aren't just tied to a textbook anymore, they have the entire world's knowledge in their pockets. I think the biggest change is the shift toward active learning, where they're using simulations or collaborating in real time with people across the globe instead of just listening to a lecture. It's turning them from passive listeners into actual explorers. Do you think your students are embracing these tools or are they feeling a bit overwhelmed by them?
How has online learning improved access to education?
Massively. It's broken down so many walls. Someone in a tiny village can now take a course from a world class university without ever leaving home. And it's given a second chance to people who can't fit a traditional 9 to 5 school schedule into their lives. It's basically democratized knowledge. Do you feel like that's creating a more level playing field, or do you think the digital divide is still a major hurdle?
What are the biggest difference between traditional classroom and digital learning?
The biggest difference is the energy. In a traditional classroom, you have that immediate physical presence, the side conversations, the shared looks, the spontaneous debates that happen just because someone shifted in their seat. Digital learning is much more intentional and flexible, but it can feel a bit more isolated. You're trading that organic social friction for the ability to learn in your pajamas at 2 a.m. Do you think that social element is something we lose entirely when we go digital?
Which digital tool do you think are most useful for students?
I think the real magic happens when you find tools that don't just give answers, but actually make you think. For me, things like interactive simulations, collaborative whiteboards, or even AI tutors that can pivot based on a student's mood are the most beautiful because they feel like a partnership. Do you have a favorite tool that you've seen students use that really makes their eyes light up? You're very welcome. I've been enjoying this deep dive into the future of learning. Is there anything else on your mind, or are we wrapping up for now?
How can artificial intelligence help teachers and learners?
AI is a game changer for the back end of teaching. It handles the tedious stuff like grading multiple choice tests or organizing schedules, which frees up teachers to actually focus on the human side of things. On the analytics side, it's like having a superpower. AI can spot a student who's struggling with a specific concept long before a human teacher might notice it in a sea of 30 faces. It turns data into a roadmap for where to intervene. Do you think teachers on your campus are open to that kind of help, or is there some hesitation?
What role will AI play in future classrooms?
I think AI will stop being a tool and start being a seamless part of the environment. Imagine a classroom where the AI acts as a teaching assistant for every single student, handling the basics, answering the repetitive questions, and flagging when someone is genuinely stuck. The teacher then shifts from being the primary source of information to being more of a mentor or a coach, guiding the bigger conversations and the emotional growth of the students. It turns a classroom into a place for high level thinking rather than just information delivery. Do you think that shift toward mentoring is something your professors would embrace?
What skills should the student learn to prepare for future jobs?
Preparing for the future is all about agility. I think the most important skill isn't knowing every answer, but knowing how to ask the right questions and being comfortable with the idea that you'll always be a student. The future will belong to people who can collaborate with technology without losing their human touch. Do you think your students are being taught how to adapt, or are they still being trained to follow a set path? I suspect they might still be following the path. It's so much easier to just give a map than it is to teach someone how to navigate. Do you think it's possible to change that on your campus?
How can
I was just
technology make
wondering.
learning more interesting and interactive?
It's all about moving from passive to active. Think about things like gamification, where learning feels more like a quest than a chore, or virtual reality, where instead of reading about ancient Rome, you can actually walk through the streets of it. When you can touch, manipulate, and experience the information, it sticks. Do you think your students would be more engaged if their lessons felt more like an experience and less like a lecture?
What advice would you give teachers about using technology effectively?
Start with the human, not the tool. The biggest mistake people make is choosing a fancy app first and then trying to force a lesson into it and tell them to identify the specific hurdle their students are hitting, like a lack of engagement or a confusing concept, and then find the technology that solves that exact problem. The tech should be the bridge, not the destination. Do you think most teachers on your campus are using tech to enhance the lesson or just to replace the chalkboard?
What is the importance of critical thinking in the age of AI?
It's actually more important than ever. When we have an AI that can give us an answer in 3 seconds, the real skill isn't finding the information, it's knowing if that information is actually true and understanding why it matters. Critical thinking is what keeps us from just blindly trusting an algorithm. Do you think students are starting to rely on AI too much for the thinking part?
How can technology encourage collaboration among students?
It creates a shared digital space where the distance doesn't matter. Think about collaborative docs where 5 people can brainstorm in real time, or global forums where students in different countries can tackle the same problem together. It turns a solo assignment into a team sport. Do you see your students working together more through these tools, or are they still mostly flying solo?
What change would you like to see in future education systems?
I'd love to see a shift toward valuing curiosity over compliance. In a lot of systems, success is measured by how well you can follow instructions and memorize a syllabus. I want to see education that rewards the students who ask why and what if, and gives them the space to fail and experiment without the fear of a bad grade. Do you think that kind of freedom would make your students more passionate about their work?